Finding the turning points and minimum points. Today's lesson will be to do with using completing the square to work out turning points and minimum points. Let's recap completing the square because we need to know this skill if we are working out turning points and minimum points. So let's have a look at a quadratic equation, which we can complete the square on then. Okay, so here I have got x squared plus 6x minus 8. Okay, right. So we need to complete the square on this. So this is how we do it. I'm going to write x in a bracket here, and then we halve this coefficient here, or half the number 6. The second, you could say the number in front of the x, we halve. So half of positive 6 is positive 3. Then it subtract whatever this number here is, 3 squared, and then you bring the minus 8 back down. Okay, so that's squared there. So we're going to have x, oops, change the pen. We're going to have x plus 3 squared minus, well, what's 3 squared? 3 squared is 9, minus 8. Well, we can sort this left bit out because we can do x plus 3 squared. Well, minus 8 minus 9 minus 8 is minus 17. And there we are, we have completed the square. Okay, let's have a look at another question like this then. So let's do x squared plus 2x plus 9. Again, write x in the bracket, half this, so plus 1, minus 1 squared, and then bring the number at the end back down, plus 9. Okay, x plus 1 all squared minus, well, what's 1 times 1 is 1, plus 9. Then I've got x plus 1 squared, well, what's minus 1 plus 9 is positive 8, and I have completed the square there. Okay, let's do a few more examples of completing the square. Then we can look at some GCSE style questions to do with completing the square and then working at the minimum point and the turning point. How about, let's have a look at x squared minus 3x plus 2, because the first two examples we had positive numbers. So let's have a look at negative numbers. So I'm going to do x and a minus squared. Again, you half that number. Now, you might be thinking, well, actually, for half number 3, it's not a whole number. That's not a problem. You could have decimals. That's absolutely fine. So it's up to you. You can either write it as a fraction or you can write it as a decimal. So I'm just going to write it as a fraction. So half of 3 is 3 over 2. 3 divided by 2. I'm just leaving it as a fraction. You could leave it as a decimal. We'll do that as well in a minute. Subtract, well, 3 over 2 squared. I'm just going to put them in brackets, okay, because it's a fraction. I'm bringing the number at the end down. So I've got x minus 3 over 2 all squared minus, well, what's 3 over 2 squared? Well, that's quite easy for me to work out because I just square the top number and the bottom number. So 3 squared is 9 and, well, 2 squared is 4 plus 2. So again, I've got x minus 3 over 2 all squared. Now I've got to sort this out. Okay, I've got to do minus 9/4 add 2. Well, if I'm adding or subtracting with a decimal or with a fraction, sorry, I've got to put it under a common denominator, haven't I? So let's do that. I've got minus 9 over 4. Well, what's the invisible denominator under that? Is 1, isn't it? So I've got a times top and bottom by 4. So I end up with 8 over 4. Okay, so x minus 3 over 2 all squared. Well, now this is easy to do. What's minus 9 add 8 is minus 1, isn't it? It's minus 1/4. There we are. And then what you could just do is at the end, just change it into a decimal if you want to, because 3 over 2 is 1.5 all squared minus 0.25. Okay, that's the easiest bit. Otherwise, what you just could have done here is you could have done x minus 1.5 all squared minus 1.5 squared plus 2. And then you would just do x minus 1.5 squared minus, well, you'd have to do 1.5 times 1.5. So you could do, well, normally completing the square would be in a non-calculator paper. So entirely up to you. I would use a lattice method to multiply. Again, there's a video on this on the website if you want to have a look at it. 5 times 1 is 5, so 0, 5. 5 times 5, 25. 1 times 1, 0, 1, and then 0, 5 there. Add the diagonals, that's 5, that's 12. Carry the 1 over, that diagonal there is 2 now, 0. You find where the decimal points meet, they meet here. And then what you do is you drop it down the diagonal, which is there, so it's 2.25. Add 2. Then you've got x minus 1.5 all squared, or minus 2.25, add 2 is just minus 0.25. And there we are, exactly the same way. Okay, rightio. Let's have a look at some example questions then that I have picked out from GCSE papers to do with completing the square. Okay, so, I'm going to have a question here that I'm going to write out. I'm just picking these from different GCSE questions for us to do. So the first question, number 1, is write x squared minus 8x plus 20 in the form x plus p squared plus q, and hence find the line of symmetry. Okay, so that there is your question there that we have to work out. Now you can see it says write it in the form x plus p squared plus q. That actually means complete the square. Okay, so that's your hint that you've got to complete the square. So let's complete the square. We've got x squared minus 8x plus 20. Right. Sorry. So now let's halve the middle number, which is 4 all squared, minus 4 squared plus the number at the end, which is 20. So we've got x, we've got x minus 4 squared minus, it's not, that here is not minus 4 squared. So don't be tempted to do minus 4 times minus 4 is positive 16. It's just subtract 4 squared. The minus does not belong to the number 4. So 4 squared is 16 plus 20. X minus 4 squared was minus 16 plus 20. It's positive 4. And there we are. That's your first part of the question. Okay. Rightio. Then is asking you to work out the line of symmetry. Well, the line of symmetry is just this number here, but the opposite of it. So that's a minus 4. So your line of symmetry would be x equals positive 4. Okay. And all that means is if I draw my graph out there, remember, if you have a look back, that's y and that's x. If we have a look back at the top equation, that's a quadratic equation, isn't it? So what is our graph going to look like? It's going to be a U-shaped graph, isn't it? Because a quadratic graph is also always a U-shaped graph. Okay, so we're going to say that x is 4 somewhere here, yeah? X equals 4. Okay. And I'm just going to say the graph will be looking something like this, and I'll let you know why in a minute. And that's your line of symmetry, x equals 4. Okay, that's what your graph will look like. Okay, let's do another question like this. Move on to slightly tricky questions. Okay, let's do one again to do with symmetry. So we're going to say, right, x squared plus 10x plus 35 in the form, and then again x plus p squared plus q, and find the line of symmetry. Okay, so again, let's complete the square. We've got x squared plus 10x plus 35. Okay, half the middle one, so x plus 5 squared. Subtract 5 squared, bring the number back down. Sort this out, x plus 5 squared minus, well, 25 plus 35. Okay, right. Then I've got to add the last bit up, x plus 5 all squared. Well, what's minus 25? Add 35 is positive 10. And symmetry, remember, it's the number in the bracket with the opposite of it. x equals minus 5. Okay, that means that x minus 5 going down would be your line of symmetry. So I'm just going to draw this out. I'm going to say x is minus 5 somewhere here. That's my y. That there is my x. And it's probably somewhere about there, okay? And like that. Okay, I just kind of missed it off. So just say x is 5 there. Okay. Right, let's have a look at another question then. Okay, so this time let's have a look at a GCSE style question. So I'm just going to pick one from the GCSE papers. So we're going to say, write x squared minus 6x plus 1 in the form x plus a squared plus b. So look, notice how the letters have changed, but it still means you've got to complete the square, where a and b are integers. So that's your first part of your question. So we'll work that out first. That's worth 2 marks in your GCSE exam. So I've got x squared minus 6x plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to do x minus, well, half the 6, which is 3 squared minus 3 squared, bring the number back down, plus 1. X minus 3 squared minus, well, what's 3 squared is 9 plus 1. That now becomes minus 9. X minus 3 squared minus 9 add 1 is minus 8. There we are. Okay, that is completed the square, and I've worked out the values of a and b. A is minus 3 and b is minus 8. Okay. Then the second part of the question says, hence or otherwise write down the coordinates of the turning point of the graph y equals x squared minus 6x plus 1. Now don't be confused, because the equation we started off with is x squared minus 6x plus 1. They've just put a y equals there because obviously when you plot this graph on your axes, it would be y equals x squared minus 6x plus 1. So we are working the turning point. That means where does the graph turn? So you need completing the square for this. So our completing the square was x minus 3 squared minus 8. Well, it's always the opposite here again for what the number in the bracket is. That's a minus 3. So it's going to be a positive 3, and that number stays the same, minus 8. That's the turning point of your graph. So I'll show you what that means on a axis here. So I've got x here, and I've got y there. Okay, 3 minus 8. So that's going to be x is 3 somewhere back here, and minus 8 there. Yeah, and that just means obviously it's a U-shaped graph. So that means the graph turns there. So can you see? The graph comes all the way here, and then it's about to turn because it goes back up. That's the turning point. That would be 3 minus 8. And obviously that number there also tells you the line of symmetry. So while we're here, we can just recap that as well. That is your line of symmetry, x equals 3, okay? Which again is always the opposite number to that, okay? Right, let's have a look at another question like this then again. So I'm not going to write down write question number 1 for that. Question 3, right, we'll do question 4. Okay, question 4. I'm not going to write down the full question, but we're going to say that we're going to write x squared plus 8x plus 5 in the form x plus a squared plus b. Okay, so again, that means complete the square. So I'm going to have x plus half the 8, which is 4 all squared, minus 4 squared, bring the number back down, plus 5. X plus 4 all squared, minus, well, what's 4 squared? 4 squared is 16, plus 5. So x plus 4 squared, now I've got to do minus 16 plus 5, which is minus 11. And there you are. Now I'm going to work out the turning point. Now, turning point is also known as minimum point. It is both the same thing, so don't get confused if one question says turning point or the question says minimum point. So again, where's you're completing the square? It's here. It's the opposite to that one. So that's positive 4, it's minus 4, and that last number stays the same, minus 11. That's where your graph turns. So again, I will just draw that out for you to have a look at. That's y, that's x. So minus 4 minus 11 would be somewhere here. Something like that. That would be line of symmetry. That point there would be minus 4 minus 11. And obviously line of symmetry would be x equals minus 4 if you were asked to work out the line of symmetry. Okay, let's have a look at another question like this then. Okay, trying to have a look at a question from a GCSE paper, right? So this question here would be question 5. Okay, by completing the square, find the coordinates of the turning point of the curve with the equation y equals x squared plus 3x minus 7. Okay, so this is worth 3 marks in the exam from the paper that I've taken this question from. So x plus, well, I've got to half the 3. I'm going to leave it as a fraction, 3 over 2 squared. Subtract 3 over 2 squared minus 7. So again, that stays x plus 3 over 2 squared minus, well, if I'm squaring 3 over 2, I just square top and bottom, which is 9 over 4 minus 7. Right, in order to subtract this, I've got to put that under a common denominator. So that invisible denominator is 1. So I've got to do x plus 3 over 2 squared minus 9 over 4 times top and bottom by 4. So that's 28 over 4. So now it's quite simple and straightforward for me. Okay, minus 9 minus 28 is minus 37 over 4. Okay, and there we are. We have answered our question. Not fully yet though, because I've got to write down the turning point. So it's the opposite to that. So it's going to be minus 3 over 2 and minus 37 over 4. Okay, and that's it. Right, let's have a look at another question then. Okay, that's question 6 now. Okay, write 2x squared plus minus 12x, sorry. Let's get that right. Minus 12x plus 23 in the form a and then x plus b squared plus c. That's your first part of your question. Okay, so this is slightly different now from all the other questions we've done, because you can see we've got a coefficient in front of the x squared. We've got a number in front of the x squared. All the other questions we looked at were, look, x squared plus 8x plus 5. We had x squared minus 6x plus 1, and so on here. We had x squared plus 3x minus 7 there, but we've got a number in front of the x squared, which makes it slightly tricky. And, you know, so this is what you have to do. So I'm going to take out the number 2, okay, and I'm going to just take it out from here. We can leave the number at the end on its own, okay. So I'm going to do 2 lots of x squared and then minus 6x, make sure that's okay, plus 23. And it tells you there you're going to have a number outside. So I'm going to do 2 lots of, and now I can complete the square. If I complete the square, I'm going to have x minus 3 squared, aren't I? Yeah. And then I'm going to do minus 3 squared plus 23. And just put a square bracket around that one. I'm just going to put a proper bracket around these. Okay. Okay, that's better. Right, so 2 x minus 3 squared, well, minus what's 3 squared is 9 plus 23. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the 2 back in. 2 times that bracket is 2 times x minus 3 squared. Well, 2 times minus 9 is minus 18. plus 23. Okay, so I'm going to have two lots of x minus 3 squared. Well, I've got to do minus 18 plus 23. Minus 18 plus 23 is positive 5. And there we are. I've written it in that way. Okay. Then the question says, and you can see that's right, because look, we've got a number in front of the bracket. Then you've got to work out the turning point of your graph. And if I write down the completed square, don't be confused by the number in front. Honestly, it doesn't make a difference. Again, that would be just 3 and 5. You do the opposite what's in the bracket. And again, if I was to draw this out for you, okay, 3, 5 is somewhere there. That's what your graph would look like. That's a turning point at 3, 5. That's where your graph turns to go back up. And again, your line of symmetry there would be x equals 3. So you need to know how to complete the square in order to work out the turning point and the minimum point. I'm just going to show you a different way of just completing the square for this. Okay, I'm going to do it in a different color pen because you could do it a different way. 2x squared minus 12x plus 23. What you could do is you can take out the 2 from everything. I've got x squared minus 6x plus, well, half of 23 is 11.5. And then what people tend to do is 2 times, well, x minus 3 squared. And then I'm going to do minus 3 squared and then plus 11.5. And then I'm going to leave the x minus 3 squared. Well, minus 3 squared is 9 plus 11.5. And then 2. And then I'm just going to do the bracket. X minus 3 squared. Well, then I've got to do minus 9 plus 11.5, which is 2.5. And then I just times it by 2. 2 lots of x minus 3 squared plus 5. And you can see it end up exactly the same way. You can either just take out the 2 from that. I took out the 2 from this bit here first because I knew that was going to be a decimal, and obviously completing the square is a non-calculator question paper. So I didn't really want to deal with many decimals. So you can do that way like that. Otherwise, you can just take out 2 from it all if it makes your life a lot easier. Okay, then again, you can see you can still work out the minimum point and the line of symmetry when you've completed the square. That's all for today's lesson. Thank you for watching.